Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It is Monday, May 26, 2025, and on Mondays we look at mathematics and statistics. But stick around, I think you're going to enjoy this. We're going to talk about the heartbeat hypothesis today. So we're actually focusing on different themes on a weekly basis, with each daily vlog touching on the theme from a different perspective. And so this week's theme is the heart. And of course, in humans and other mammals, the heart refers to a vital organ that's pumping blood through our circulatory systems. And that's going to be the focus of today's vlog as well. But remember, too, that the heart also represents the inner core, or innermost part of something as well, like the heart of the city, or if we talk about getting to the heart of the matter. So there's much more implied when we talk about the concept of the heart. And so, as I say, we're going to be looking at the heart in each vlog from different perspectives, different vantages. Now, in today's vlog on mathematics and statistics, I'd like to apply that particular analytic lens to something known as the heartbeat hypothesis. So, what's that? Well, it would seem that the smaller the mammal, the faster the heartbeat. But heartbeats are somewhat proportional to the size of the mammal. So consider, for example, North America's smallest mammal, the American pygmy shrew. Tiny animal. It's only about 2 inches long on average, not including the roughly almost an inch and a half tail as well. And that animal only weighs about 4 to 5 grams. So you could put it on your finger, you wouldn't even, you'd barely feel it. So just absolutely tiny. And yet at the same time, its metabolic rate is off the chart. Its heart's beating about 1,400 times per minute. And compare that to the human, whose heart rate is typically somewhere in the 60s or 70s. Again, could be lower if you're an athlete, or considerably lower if you're an elite athlete, or higher, based on genetics or other conditions. And then compare that to the elephant, which has a heart rate of only about 25 to 30 beats per minute on average. So, while again, you may not have learned this in biology class in school, but almost a century ago, biologists actually discovered this empirical pattern, or the 3/4 power scaling rule, or simply sometimes known as Kleber's law. What is it exactly? Well, Max Kleber studied a variety of different mammals and their metabolic rates, and he discovered that for a huge number of animals, an animal's basal metabolic rate, or BMR, scales to 3/4 the power relative to the animal's mass. So as the mass of the animal increases, its metabolic rate increases proportionately to the 3/4 power of that mass. Okay, that might be a little confusing, but just say hypothetically you've got two different animals. One only weighs a kilogram, and the other on average, and the other weighs 100 kilograms on average. So Kleber's law then predicts that the larger animal will have a BMR that's about 8 times higher than the smaller animal. Again, there's a simple mathematical formula for that, but that's not my main focus. Rather, what I find incredible is that this pattern holds across so many mammals, and even more remarkably, it's not just that the pulse rate slows as the animal gets larger, but their lifespans increase proportionately as well. So, for example, a mouse's heart beats about 500 times per minute. The cat's rate is about 150 to 200 beats per minute. Again, unless the cat is chasing the mouse, in which case both of their heart rates almost certainly go up. But the point is that the mouse, with a heartbeat that's beating 3 times the rate of the cat, lives only about 1/3 as long on average. That's right. So the mouse lives about 5 years on average, and the cat lives about 15 years on average. It's almost as though the mouse is using up all of its allotted heartbeats 3 times faster than the mouse. Wait, what? Does that mean that mammals are granted a similar total number of heartbeats? Well, basically, yes. As astonishing as this may sound, if we set aside humans for the moment, most mammals are granted roughly a similar lifetime supply of heartbeats. How many? Well, nice round figure. It's about 1 billion. So, as astonishing as this may seem, the total heartbeats across different mammals scales somewhere close to 1 billion if you total them up based on beats per minute and average lifespans. Let me show you a little chart here. Describes this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so again, the pygmy shrew has about 1 billion, just over 1 billion total heartbeats in its lifetime, based on a figure of 1,300 BPM and a 1.5 year lifespan. The mouse does pretty well, about 1.3 billion, based on 500 BPMs over 5 years. Cat, closer to 1.2 billion. The horse, just under 1 billion. The elephant, just over 1 billion. Okay, and then if you look at the chart here that I presented as well, you can see this line here, and you see how close the mouse, the hamster, the rat, the monkey, the cat, the dog, the tiger, the giraffe, etc. You see how close all of these animals are to that line. Again, they scale in a remarkably similar fashion. Okay, the one outlier though is the human being. So yes, we're the outlier. If your heart rate is, say, close to 70 beats per minute, then your heart will beat about 100,000 times each day. But scientists actually estimate that the human heart beats something like closer to about 3.5 million times on average each year. And so that would mean your heart will have passed that magical 1 billion mark by the time you've turned 30. That's right. So once you've turned 30, if you're like most other mammals, then you should be close to death, or you should already be pushing up daisies, as it were, right? And indeed, the average human heart, actually beats somewhere around 2.5 billion times per lifetime. And so if you live to 90, then that means that you'll surpass the 3 billion threshold. Is there an absolute upper limit? Well, we don't know. If you think about the oldest person officially on record to have lived, or somewhere around 122 years, then their hearts may have beat somewhere in the order of 4 billion times. Maybe that is the absolute upper limit. Who knows? But let me end this on a practical note. If you think about this, let's imagine that we only get 2.5 billion heartbeats. Well, I'm in my early 60s. That means I've already passed the 2 billion mark. So I'm counting down now, right? So I've only got about a 500 million to go. So in every day, there goes another, 100,000 or close to that. But what if we were to slow our heart rates down? Let's say instead of going at about 70 or even 60, what if you could slow your heart rate down to about 50 beats per minute? That's actually about what my resting heart rate tends to be these days. It's around 50. Again, that's if I'm not exercising or walking around or stressed out, but just sitting calmly, serenely, relaxing, measure my heart rate. It's about 50 beats per minute. So if that's the case, then that would mean that my heart would only be beating about 72,000 times each day, or yours if you could lower yours to 50, rather than that, roughly 100,000 average. So instead of 35 million beats per year, well, we would lower that lower heart rate would translate into only about 26.3 million beats per year. So that would imply about 19 years for a 500 million heartbeats compared to about 14 years for the faster beating heart. You see my point? So in effect, by slowing your heart rate from 70 to 50, if you could do that, you could mathematically add about 5 years to your life per 500 million heartbeats. And over a lifetime, let's say that somehow there's an iron law and we're really only granted 2.5 billion heartbeats. But if you could slow your heart rate to 50, say from 70, then that implies about a 95-year lifespan rather than less than 72. Now, to be clear, this is not literally true. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. There's no fixed number of heartbeats. There's just a statistical average. And as I've discussed previously, there's a huge array of genetic and environmental factors that are going to directly and indirectly affect our lifespans and, of course, our heartbeats and our hearts. And some of us live in families genetically that are prone to heart disease or heart conditions, unfortunately, including mine to a certain degree. So there's all kinds of things that are going to actually directly and indirectly affect our hearts. But I'm just suggesting that isn't there still sort of an implicit logic to slowing our heart rates down if we can? A slower rate, if nothing else, tends to imply a healthier heart, one that's operating more efficiently. And that's a good thing. Research does indicate that your improved fitness translates into a reduced risk of heart disease and other cardiovascular problems. And a slower heart rate usually reflects less overall stress, too. In general, we've all been advised, have we not, from time to time to slow down, take it easy, relax, etc., and for good reason. But especially if that means lowering your heart rate. That might mean, potentially, a few or even several more years added to your lifespan. So there is a certain logic to all of this as well, isn't there? So I don't know about you, but I'll take the extra years. And in general, I guess my advice is to get that heart rate down if you can. It almost certainly is going to translate into all kinds of additional health and other benefits as well. Okay, well, that said, until next time, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your gently beating heart, and dole out hugs in abundance. And I'll see you tomorrow, where we're going to be looking at the heart in terms of music and songs. See you then.